What would happen if you found out that the only real fight you have in this lifetime is with yourself? Let's talk about that. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today I'm joined by a wife, mom, Gigi, most recently, coming out of the financial world into restaurant ownership and currently a trader. I like to term it corporate refugee, which I'm kind of a corporate refugee myself. And also my wife, Kristina Dittmer. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
It's kind of weird, but as we've talked about this over the months and, I guess a couple of years now that I've been doing the podcast, I don't know when we brought up this particular idea of having my lovely wife come on, but I think the really cool thing is, everyone's got a story and everyone's got things that they can share and, maybe help out with, or by telling the story, help themselves. There's just a myriad of potential benefits. So I thought it's very odd, but also very cool to have you on.
Well, we've had so many conversations and we're like, oh, that'd be great for the podcast. Oh, that'd be great for the podcast. Because we just start, shooting the bull or whatever, talking about life stuff and whatnot. But so here we are. But I must admit, a little nerve-wracking. I really challenge all the married people out there or otherwise entwined in a serious relationship to go on camera with their significant other. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with public speaking, but this feels a little odd. It's all good though.
It does feel a little odd. And I'm actually, it feels more odd than I thought it would, but the interesting thing is usually I'm, tens or hundreds or even thousands of miles from either, being a guest on a podcast or having, where my guest is located compared to me. And I'd say we're probably, I don't know, a couple 100 feet from each other, which it feels like a long way away. But I know I'm going to see you 2 minutes after we get done anyway. So yeah. I think that's the weird part.
Right. It's like entering an alternate reality for a little while.
Yeah, here we are. Well, one of the things that I think about and I've said on this podcast before to guests, and I think I've said it as I've guested on podcasts, is that you told me that you felt like you had a much better handle for me and who I am, who I was, what I'm about, all that sort of thing when you read my book, my first book. And I think that's a really cool thing. That was something that that struck me because I'm like, well, we've been hanging out together for 20 years, like how could that happen? And I feel like this whole podcast thing draws those kinds of things out that maybe we haven't talked about or we haven't shared or something, just sort of pops up that we hadn't thought about or addressed or talked about or whatever. So I think that was what really struck me in terms of, after 20 years, what else is there to know? But I guess the bottom line is there could be a lot.
Yes. And I guess we always keep changing, right? I mean, there's nothing that ever stays static, in human nature or nature or whatever. So whether we're going backwards or forwards or whatever, but we are morphing, we are changing, and subconsciously or very proactively. And I think that's the thing that has struck me over the years, just in terms of our marriage that, we've talked about before, but, it blossomed into something that was beyond, I think, what either one of us ever could have actually imagined. And it continues to blossom, it continues to grow, and it continues to morph and I think you blossom, I blossom, and we blossom as a unit, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I think the cool part, and there's lots of cool parts about that, and I believe you think the same way, but if you don't, you know, I'd love to hear your opinion. I think it really starts with each of us working on ourselves, and then we come together as a unit, and we're together as a unit anyway, but you know, working on ourselves individually has really paid significant dividends in terms of, you know, our relationship being healthy and what it is now.
I do agree. It is amazing when you work on yourself and then all of a sudden, miraculously, the other person seems to be changing. You're like, how does that happen?
It is a miracle.
Oh, yeah, it is a miracle. But yes, back to your book comment. When I read your book a couple of years ago, it took me a while to get through it. I've read it a couple of times, but we know what we know as far as being husband and wife and living together 24/7 and all that, which I'm sure most people, if not everyone, would say, yes, I know my spouse. But then how often do you really have those deeply emotional or significant conversations within your marriage, within the day-to-day, about how that person got to be where they are, or why that person ticks that way, or, you know, for good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't really matter, but just understanding kind of their genesis and what shaped them. And as much as I knew your story, I think what hit me the most was it was deeper layers of you that even though we would talk, we really didn't talk about, you know, all the intricacies that make us up individually until you pour them out on a page, I think, or put in conscious effort to actually discuss them and open yourself up to that vulnerability. Most of us, I think, I have, you know, we let people see what we want them to see. You know, we want them to see, oh, we're here today. And I think that we don't always go into the dark corners of our minds or our histories because it's scary and we've left them behind for a reason. You know, we moved on, we've said goodbye, or we've shut the door, or so we thought, or we actually have. And who wants to visit that stuff? There might be a few things in my past I don't want to visit, but I'm learning. You know, so learning that it's healthy to say hello to what's hiding in the closets. Not to bring it into your current life necessarily and let it disrupt or deal or have any issues with it, but to just acknowledge that it was part of you and it helped you become who you are today, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think it just brought me to a different level of understanding you, like the layers of the onion we all talk about, you know, so I'm with you now on a few of those layers.
Yeah, I think that's and you put it in a great way, you know, in terms of just we're molded and we're shaped by what happens to us, you know, and then more so probably by how we choose to respond to what happens to us. And then what do we do with it after that? You know, do we, like you said, do we sort of tuck it away and put it in a little locked case and like, oh, I'm not going back there again. I'm not looking at that anymore. You know, that sucks. That hurts too much. That's difficult. And And that was one of the things that actually writing my book did for me. It helped me sort of, maybe let go of some things, maybe just sort of dump some things that, I know we've used the term open my kimono, but I definitely opened my kimono in the book and, for all the world to see. But it was helpful for me, and it was cleansing for me. And it also, a lot of the things that maybe had been stuffed in little corners, of my psyche or whatever throughout my life, or my, emotional state or whatever, just started to come out. I'm like, oh man, I haven't thought about that in 35 years or 40 years or 50 years, so there's always more things, and there's always more, I guess, room for exploration and it doesn't necessarily have to do with improvement, although I know it lends itself to us improving ourselves if we take an honest look at our past and our trajectory and where we're going and where we've been. But I think there's something very healing about looking back and finding, whatever that is that might be affecting us today, and that we sort of shoved in the corner. So I know I'm just sort of echoing what you said, but I agree with that 100%. And we've talked about that probably a million times, but it never hurts to continue to discuss, because new things happen all the time.
Right. And I think that when I read your book a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, your first book, not only did it teach me about you, help me understand you better, your history, your overcoming challenges and obstacles, but it also really got my brain going. like, not just about you, but about me, about my life, about my family members, about my world. It really kind of helped me, as they used to say, I put on my thinking cap and started to dive into some of these things that I probably had not consciously or proactively worked on in a while. Not that I necessarily thought I don't need to work on anything, but I think I had just gotten to a point where life was good. I'm fine. I feel fine. Life is good. Family's good. Marriage is great. What do I need to work on? So fast forward, I guess kind of fast forward or somewhat concurrently, I suppose. I started trading a few years ago, learning how to trade, and then I guess actually trading about 1.5 years ago. And it's an interesting journey because it's a very solo journey. It's Joseph Campbell in is it The Hero's Journey, when you go into the belly of the whale, or is it the other one, the other reference?
That can definitely be part of the hero's journey. Sure.
Sounds good to me. So, going into trading, and then I loved it at first because it was technical, it was analytical, it was right up my alley. I literally fell in love with it. It was wow, where has this been my whole life? And I'm this is really cool. I can really do something with this and whatnot. And then I started going through these phases with it. Part of it was, I want to hurry up and get to the end of that journey. I want to hurry up and produce results. I want to hurry up and find out what I can actually do with this. And not unlike a lot of paths or all journeys in our lives, they they don't happen overnight, right? It's the whatever, what do they say? 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. I don't know if that's true, but then as I started to kind of try to tackle the technical side of trading, I started to have to deal with what I call the emotional side, what a lot of the trader space people call the psychological side. Somebody might say there's a difference. Somebody might say they're the same. I don't know. But like, why am I not getting there? Why am I so frustrated? Why am I so impatient? It literally mirrors back to you all of your crap you don't want to see. Like, it's kind of mind blowing. It's like, I swear, I would like tell every 18-year-old to like try trading for a couple of years just so they could learn about themselves. Like, it's, to me, it's that good of a reflection in terms of, oh, you're wrestling with this emotion today. That comes out on the charts. You're not feeling well. You're not well rested. Something's bothering you with somebody in the family. That comes out on the charts. Like, so if you start paying attention, as I believe I have, you really get a better understanding for who you are and what makes you tick and what makes me tick, I should say. Which is, it's, I don't even know how to explain it other than some days it's daunting. Some days it's frustrating. A lot of days it's joyful. A lot of days it's like, okay, wow, like this is good. I'm learning. Is there that still part of me that says, well, when am I going to get there? When am I going to get to that next step, that next level, that next goal, if you will? And I believe a lot of us are like that, but I also believe that's part of my history, which is like, hurry up and get there. I think I've been trying to hurry up and get there since I was about 4 years old. So, yeah. So what have I learned? Slow down. And then when I think I'm slowing down, slow down even more. And then when I think I'm slower, slow down even more, amongst many other things I've learned about myself. But it's been fabulous. It's led me down a path of learning about a trading coach that turned me on to a whole bunch of self-development, self-improvement, whatever you want to call it, type modalities. It goes to a lot of the things that you talk about in your second book in terms of the trajectory, I'll just tell you this little thing. Yesterday was a good trading day. And I specifically didn't tell you yesterday because I knew we were going to be doing the podcast. But yesterday was a good day for me in terms of like, I was, pretty even keel. I followed my process. The results were good. And I'm feeling pretty excited. Like I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling like, oh, this is great. And then you know what I heard in my head? You'll love this. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very cool. Stay small.
That was really cool. That was really cool. And I think that's perfect. That's perfect for all those moments I've had in trading and all moments in life, right? Like all those moments where enjoy the success and, enjoy it and for whatever that is in that moment or whatever. But, you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and for trading, for me, you do it all over again. It's kind of like each day's a new day. Each day's a clean slate. Like don't carry that. What would be the right word for that? I want to say exuberance, but that's not necessarily something like that, but in a negative way. You don't want to carry that like pride or that ego or whatever, with you into the next day. Cause then you're like, well, no, hold on. You're going to start missing the lessons if you start like putting the ego up in the forefront. So anyway.
Or get your ass handed to you, right? Like,
right.
I mean, that's, and I think that's, as I've watched this journey unfold for you, the trading journey, and, you know, you had success in the corporate world, you had success as a restaurant owner, you know, and just from a professional perspective, it just seems like this really is sort of your next, you know, Mount Everest, I guess, right? There's it's something to climb, and I've watched this unfold, and there's only one thing I would disagree with you on that you just mentioned, and that is, you know, wondering when you're going to get, like, you're going to grow, or you're going to, or get to the next level, or you're going to have that success or whatever. Like, you're having it currently, and I see it because I see you having these experiences, and I see you be up, and I see you be down, and sometimes I can just feel it. And I'm like, and I'm, you know, a lot of times I don't say anything, but because I know you'll tell me whenever the time is right. But it's really fun to watch. And one other thing I'll add is that I'm glad it's not me, because I'm not the technical person. I would all the money would be gone. Like, everything would be gone. We'd be done. We'd be starting over.
You would be like many stories.
Yeah. Well, ultimately we'd end up okay, but you know, it's because we'd have to figure it out again. But I'm glad you're doing that from the technical perspective, and the emotional, mental, spiritual, all the things that are sort of blossoming in your life and in yourself, most importantly, are just really cool to watch, because I can see it happen. It's kind of like reading the book in real time. One last thing is this podcast was not a shameless promotion of any of my books or anything. We just happened to talk about them based on, you know, some of the story stuff, but you know, certainly not a promotion for the books or anything like that. So let's talk a little bit about your story. You know, if you don't mind sharing, you know, just sort of from whence you came, because I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, there is a trajectory in life, and there is, you know, the ups and the downs and the learning and all of the difficult things and the fun things and the successes and the failures, and it all adds up to be this person that you are now. But if you wouldn't mind taking us through some of that journey, it would be wonderful.
Sure. So I'll just start with my comment I made a few minutes ago, which was I was pretty much ready to hurry up and get to whatever goal I was trying to achieve when I was 4 years old. True story. I was, for whatever reason, offended by another adult, a friend of my mom's, who talked down to me like a little kid, and I couldn't understand why she was doing that. So I was like, I better hurry up and grow up. Anyway, so whatever happened before I was 4, I have no idea. So I don't know how I got there. But then, you know, fast forward, that kind of literally set the tone for the next several decades. I always loved school. I always got a lot of feel good, you know, dopamine hits, as they say today, out of achieving with regard to my grades and school. And I got a scholarship to college, and I did all that. I went through college in 3 years. And then I got married young. I got my MBA while I was pregnant with my first child. I was on this path that was just go, 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 go. And, you know, a lot of what I understand now was, one, I think that there's always the good in the shadow, as they say, right? To something, the double-edged sword. So the good part was that I was motivated. I was ambitious. I didn't have to put a ton of effort into school to get what I wanted to get, which was great. And I loved it. I loved it all. I loved the feeling of achieving. The other side of it, which I didn't realize at the time, of course, was that it created tunnel vision, severe tunnel vision. And I also didn't slow down, there's that again, enough to realize what was truly pushing me in terms of all of those achievements, what was inside me, driving me to reach for achieving. So, we won't get into all that, but, let's just say that kind of fast forward, I had 2 boys. Several years later, I got divorced. Throughout that time, say from college until divorce, I was looking for something else. Things were starting to crack in me. I started to see that there was not that like peace or satisfaction, even in a lot of respects. Like, having the kids was wonderful, loved being a mom, but there was like, and the career was great. But then there was like other stuff that wasn't so great. So I started to just kind of look at myself a little bit, tiny bit, read some books, try to figure some stuff out. The divorce happened. Then I tried to figure some more stuff out, found a therapist, went to her for a while. And I thought I figured some stuff out well enough to say, you know what? Okay, I'm doing okay. I'm now a single mom kind of thing, working. It's all good, but it's still not great. Just in terms of, I think my innards, my innards or my inner workings, like, where's my self-esteem at? Where's my confidence at? Not that I felt like I really faked it, but probably we mostly spend our 20s faking a lot of stuff, just in terms of trying to figure out this whole adulting thing. And my road to adulthood, in my opinion, was a pretty quick succession. So anyway, now I'm in my early 30s, still kind of not quite there in terms of like settling inside, just settle down a little bit, slow down, just relax. So I think I did that for me at that time to a degree. And then I met you. That was, as you said earlier. So that was in 2004 when we actually met, or 03. Yep. All right.
Back in the day.
Fact check me.
Yeah.
So, and I think that it definitely was a wow moment. It wasn't, I felt pretty good in terms of where I was. And I think that's one of the reasons we got together at that time in our respective lives. But I think then, we had to go on a journey together, right? With Michael and Andrew, with you being, the stepdad, with the new marriage when we're both in our mid-late 30s and habits have been formed and other things and whatnot.
Did I have habits? Just kidding.
Just a few.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting now, being 57 years old, that the path I'm going down now, whether the impetus was your book, was other people's books, was trading or is trading, all these things actually put me on this journey to like, okay, you know what? I'm at this point in my life. The kids are good. We're looking down the last third of this planet. And what else is there? What else is it about in terms of myself and what I want to be for everybody in my life from here on out, what I want to leave in terms of legacy. I don't know if I like that word, but just in terms of how do I want to impact other people's lives from here until the end of my days? So for me, in order to do that, I have to go back in time. I have to kind of unravel some things, whether it's childhood stuff, teenage stuff, early adulthood stuff. And I'm doing that. I don't know how much you want to get into all that, but whatever you want to talk about there is fine with me.
No, that's cool. And thank you for sharing that story, because, the journey, right? We all have, and I know I've said this many times, but we all have our respective journeys and our respective sort of things that have happened to us and things that have affected us. And, something that might affect you might not affect me in the same way, and vice versa, and all those kinds of things. And what I suppose where we meet, the ground that we meet on is how are we doing internally? How are we resonating, or, well, or potentially poorly with how we're doing in here. And that's always been, for a long time now, the sort of wake up call for me, because I'm like, okay, something's going on. And nowadays I can feel it like that. I can wake up in the morning and I'm like, something's just off. And I'm like, oh yeah, that, and I can attend to it. The whole gremlin thing, right? That we talk about, the little dudes crawling around on us and whatever, or in us. But it's very different than years past and long time ago. And how did I deal with things then? Well, was it drugs? Was it alcohol? Was it, I'm going to eat popcorn every night for the next, 2.5 months, or whatever it is. I'm just doing things, trying to help myself out of whatever that is going on inside of me. Meanwhile, that's not the way to help myself. The way to help myself is to look inside, right? And notice and start to understand, and all of those things, which I know, you've been on that journey. And, I haven't been doing it straight for, 40 some years, but a lot of that time I've spent with introspection, because somebody taught me very early on that the only way to change is to go inside, and I had to change, because if I didn't change, I would have gone to something that would have ended up destroying me. So, and I think that's true for a lot of us. We go to these things that end up really damaging us, or we move out from that place and do some of the difficult work of inner exploration, which you're doing it.
Yeah, I think, I gave you the very short version of my story, the very condensed Cliff Notes version. I think that, what do they say? Mistakes have been made,
mistakes were made. Yeah.
Happened in Vegas, stays in Vegas. No, I'm just kidding about that. But, but things like, of course, we've all made decisions that we're either not proud of or not happy with, or if we were a regretful kind of person, we might regret it or bemoan it or whatever. Definitely have made, decisions and choices that I'm not proud of. And I think one thing that is significant for me to work on, or has been, it seems to be loosening its grip, is control. And control in terms of controlling my environment. And as they say, unpack that, it kind of led me down a path of, evidently, for whatever reason, there was some early childhood feelings of insecurity, of, for whatever reason, not either feeling safe or heard or attended to, that come up in my life bazillion years later, who knew? Like literally 30, 40 years later. And so when I look at that, I can say, okay, my control was probably a very good coping mechanism. I needed to find a way when I was much younger to feel safe, because for whatever reason, I wasn't getting that in my family. Now, that is not to say, for those who are listening, as my family probably will, that is not to say that there wasn't food on the table or roof over the head or that I wasn't loved. That is not to say that at all. All that says is that as parent-child bonding goes, and I honestly believe you have to read books about it to be really good at it. And who's good at being a mom when you're like 24 years old? Anybody? Probably not. And I was probably the same way. But so it means that whatever attachment was supposed to have been made with me as a child or infant wasn't made entirely the way it maybe should have been. And again, not through anyone's fault. But here I am, right? So you develop coping mechanisms, as we all do, defense mechanisms, to try to figure out life, to deal with things we need to deal with our choices, our decisions that we make as teenagers. Like, oh, yuck. Like some of those decisions seemed like a good idea at the time, right?
That's my highlight reel. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, we can talk about what we were all doing and, on dirt roads in the middle of the country on a Friday night. But on the other hand, thank God for my control problem. Honestly, I can call it a problem, because I think that it probably saved my ass more than once. There was a part of me that would let go of control, but only so far. And I think I've said this to you before, but if I really didn't have that control mechanism in place, I'm pretty sure I would have been some form of drug addict. I think cocaine would have been my choice, my drug of choice. I think I really would have liked Coke. Just saying. Never tried it. And for those listening, never tried pot either, believe it or not. But, alcohol was my drug of choice as far as teenagehood and whatnot goes. But okay, and early adulthood. But anyway, but yeah, so that goes back to, I think, as we unpack our layers and look at our stuff, we can't be too harsh about either decisions that we made or what we ended up gaining from it. Because the flip side is that it probably did save our butts more than once.
Yeah. No, I would say that's probably true. And as much of a, sort of cowboy as I am in terms of just how my life, I allow it to sort of roll out. We have to put up guardrails, right? We have to put up some sort of a thing and keep us from going in the ditch, right? So, and I think that's very important. And I was in the ditch when I was a younger person, and just because I stopped drinking and doing drugs didn't mean that I was necessarily out of the ditch or that I didn't go back in the ditch again. It just meant that I had a chance to get back on the road and stay on the road for a period of time, which life happens to us, whether we're straight, whether we're not, whether we're sober, whether we're not, whether we're doing drugs, whether we're not. It's just, how are we, it could be food, could be anything, right? Could be gambling, but how are we treating life under the, sort of the boot of those addictions, or are we shedding those addictions and then able to treat life sort of, face to face, instead of having that little mediator in between us that always leads us in a terrible direction. So yeah, as I can relate. I think there's so many that can relate to that story, because it's really hard it's difficult to let go And it's difficult to say, you know what, I'm taking my hands off the wheel, allow myself to be sort of guided through this life. And, you know, you still have to do stuff, but this has kind of been my mantra for some time now, that something out there knows how to do it better than I do. And I don't necessarily understand it. I really don't, but I believe it's true. And I know you've explored some of those ways of looking at things, you know, certainly throughout your life, but maybe a little more in the recent past. And so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your relationship with what you might call God or a higher power or the universe or whatever it is. You know, how is that contributed to or changed your journey?
Well, let's see. So I was raised Catholic, as you know. I raised my boys Catholic early on for a handful of years anyway. And then just in terms of my relationship with religion, really fell out of favor even long before, well, I shouldn't say long before, but quite some time ago in terms of my divorce. And I really just couldn't wrap my head around the Catholics who really just preach whatever they preach, live a different way. And I'm not saying everybody, of course. There's a lot of great people out there that subscribe to a religion. But for me, it wasn't working anymore. I didn't find as much solace in it as I probably once had. But I also think that it was, I guess, like a lot of us, my parents were both Catholic. They grew up Catholic from all their schooling, all their girls' school, boys' school, nuns, the whole 9 yards. And then they just rolled with it. They just went with it. I don't know if they ever questioned it. I don't know if they ever thought, oh, well, I don't know anything else, so I'll raise my kids Catholic, is kind of my sense. And then I did the same thing for a while. So, you know, it's like, well, all right, put the brakes on, you know, there's a different way to go about life. So I think with regard to higher power and God, I do believe in God. I'm going to switch a little bit for a second here and talk about the 12 steps. So, as you know, I've read the big book and I am working the 12 steps. And for those listening, it's not because I feel or do have a drug or alcohol addiction per se, but however, I think there's definitely enough dysfunction in my history and in decisions I've made and in my family of origin that, to me, the 12 steps are a spiritual guide of how to live life. And they really resonate with me. So I'm going through them. I'm working through them. And however, it's interesting because I don't feel, a lot of people are turned off, I think, by the 12 steps because of the reference to a higher power. And people are like, oh, I don't believe in God. And it's weird because I do believe in God, but I don't know if I've quite come to terms with what you said a minute ago in terms of life knows how to life, so to speak, or God has a plan for you, if you want to call it that. The universe has a plan for you, however you want to phrase it, and you just got to let it unfold. You know, as you and I have discussed, you and I can be sometimes two ends of that spectrum. I was at the ultimate control end of the spectrum, and you were like, oh, cowboy, hands off end of the spectrum. And I'm like, wow, I can never be like that. That's really freaky for me to even like let my hands off just a little bit. But I'm getting better at it. So God, I think, it's very important to me I pray every day. I meditate every day. I thank God every day for all the blessings in my life, for all the peace and love and serenity. But I think that whole part of the faith and the completely letting your hands off the steering wheel or loosening the grip is something that is still slowly, hopefully, happening in me. I'm not there yet.
No, I understand that. And it's like the trading. You've been going down this path, and I observe you going down this path, and my observation is you've let go of a lot in terms of, just that whole control thing, and I applaud you for that, because I'm watching it happen in real time. I'll have people on this podcast, and it's like they tell me their story and they're like, oh, and this happened and this happened and this happened. Now everything's cool and I'm a life coach. I'm like, okay, that's great. But I didn't see it all happen. I'm seeing it happen with you. And, that's a really cool thing to observe, especially for someone that, I love so deeply, that to watch that happen is amazing for me. The God thing, and I'll just clarify one thing, in terms of my sort of belief system. I don't, I grew up, as with the Lutheran education, all that sort of thing, and which is pretty close, probably first cousin to Catholicism, I would say. A few little things that we differ on, which, we can always fight wars on all that stupid stuff because of religion, which is crazy to me. But anyway, there's, I grew up with this God who was like this dude with a robe up with a white beard, and he's writing all this stuff down that I do wrong, and like, oh man, if I do enough wrong, I'm going to hell. And
no, that's Santa Claus.
Kind of like Santa Claus, but with a little more power. And it was, if he can put you away, right, for the rest of eternity in the fires of, what they call hell, like, damn. Like that never really felt so good to me. I'm like, well, but isn't God? So I know we talk about this, and I probably said it yesterday, but the most oft used phrase or phraseology in the Bible is fear not, or be not afraid. So if I'm trying to live the way the Bible's telling me to live, and it's fear not and be not afraid, and then I'm also being told that, well, you've got a pretty good chance of going to hell forever. There's just some incongruency there. And that always bothered me with just sort of the religious way of looking at life. So anyway, the thing that I was going to say is that I don't necessarily look at it like God is keeping score on me, or God, nothing like that. And I don't even necessarily believe, and my beliefs are, I was told a long time ago, be careful what you believe, because, you got to be open to it changing as well, which I think is hugely important. And I'm open to anything I believe changing at any time for something that works better in my life. But I don't know that I believe that there's a personal God. I don't think God cares if I pray like, hey, help me win this basketball game today, or boy, I sure hope the Lions win. God, please help them. You know what I mean? Like, people do pray about that sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's what God is necessarily for. I believe that, God as I understand him is, or God as I understand God, because I believe the definitions are wasted on God. Because if I can define it, it's probably not what we've been told that it is. So anyway, I don't know that there's somebody guiding me personally, but I do believe that as I move through this existence and I get the lessons, number one, the lessons go away. I don't get that lesson anymore. Somebody's in charge of that, and it ain't me. There's something guiding me toward things that are better if I go through the steps. And I don't mean the 12 steps, although those are very helpful in that process. But as I move through difficulty, opportunities will come up that can make me better. And I move through that. And another opportunity comes up that can make me better. And I'm talking about in here. And that's just fascinating to me because I'm not in charge of that. I can't think my way through that. Like something is moving, right? Something is moving and I don't know what it is. And I'm not obviously here to convince you. But we talk about all this stuff all the time, but anyway, it's fascinating as I pay attention. And also as I look back on my story and say, if I was in charge 100%, I wouldn't have the life that I have today. I just wouldn't, because I'm not that good. I don't know how to make my life as good as it is right now. Anyway, I'm done. So go ahead and jump on that, because I know I've been yapping for a little bit, but you said a lot in there that struck me.
Well, I think that makes me think of, if you keep doing the same stuff and expecting different results, that's what resonates with me, whether it's specifically to my trading. Like, well, silly girl, like, really, you keep doing the same shit. Like, why do you expect the results to be different? And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta do it different. Like, you have to really, again, maybe it's a control thing. I don't necessarily want to put it that way, but you got to take the bull by the horns and be proactive in terms of like, I'm truly not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to eat the whole cake. I'm just going to eat half or whatever, I'm joking, but or sometimes, but
I understand that. Well, sometimes it is the whole cake.
Sometimes it is the whole cake, and that's fine too.
It's all good.
But it's so funny because, like I said before, I think that it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to keep going on a self-improvement path or whatever, but, I wanted to deepen my relationships with my children. I wanted to deepen my relationships with my family. I want to really, truly spend every day that I have left on this earth feeling at peace, or I feel peace. I shouldn't say more like fulfilled, like just full of love. That's the best way to describe it. Like truly, like because I feel very peace and have felt peaceful for a long time, but like that feeling of love, the love that wells up inside us when we see our granddaughter, that kind of love, like that's all I want to do, and I want to clear away as much wreckage that is blocking my flow, my river, whatever metaphor you want to use, as much as I possibly can. So, I read a lot of books, I do the meditation, I do the breathing exercises, I do a ton of journaling. I journal with my trading, I journal outside of my trading. I've joined a couple of groups online. Inner Work Community is one of them. Like, so all of those resources, all of those things that had somebody said, oh, you're going to be doing blah, blah, blah. Had they said that to me 2 years ago, I would have been like, no, no, I'm good in my little like Kristina world of, I don't know, dare I say control or homeostasis or, no, it's good. Don't need to rock the boat, but it is amazing. I think this is one thing that probably struck me more in your book, as far as actually reading it on the page, is that there's more amazing that can happen than you ever thought possible when you do let go of the reins, when you do slow down, when you do find peace and come to terms with some of the stuff inside you. And I think that's the coolest thing. And there was something else I wanted to say, but now I forgot. So,
well, yeah, I agree. It is the coolest thing. And when I was having that discussion with Andrew, the youngest of the two in the brood, the other day about that business meeting he was going on, and we talked for, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, and just talking and deal stuff and this and that and sales and questions and all that. And he texted me later on, because one of the things that we had talked about was, I just said there's an incredible amount of freedom in not knowing. Mm. And I think there's, the world in general, right? We have our smartphones, we have information, we have stuff that we can just, information all day long, information. And so sometimes we get enough information and we think we know. Mm. And one of the most important parts in my life, I think, is to truly understand. And I was introduced to the concept a long time ago. And, there's many times when I think I know. But generally when I think I know, I find out that I don't. And then, and I also find out when I look sort of into, the universe, for lack of better terminology, there's just an infinite amount of things that I do not know, that I will never know. And why try to spend my life filling myself up with information about shit that I think I know? That's kind of, that is, to me, that's a huge part of the puzzle. It's a huge part of the puzzle. Letting go of knowing and embracing not knowing.
I think it was in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life or something like that. I think it was in that book where he said, listen as if you might learn something. And it's the same thing as what you're saying, but you know how we could hear the 10 people tell us the same thing, but it never quite hits us as that 11th person saying it a different way. And so that really hit me. And that really, because then I was like, oh, wow, I'm not really good at that. Or I can do a much better job. I judge too much. I've got my little critical gremlin, not only going after me, but going after, the other person, or completely random. But so a couple of things there, right? One, it showed me that I needed to slow down and listen as if I might learn something, no matter who I was talking to. And two, it helped me get rid of judgmental, and not like we're all human. Women get in a room, big group of women get in the room, and everybody's sizing each other up. Men do it too. But, but women are going to be like, oh, her hair this, oh, her outfit that. Men are going to be like, well, I don't know what men are going to be like. But anyway, so, but we carry that throughout our lives. And it's like, whoa, slow down. We're all probably trying to figure out the same shit. We're all feeling insecure about something, if not multiple things. We're all just trying to do the best we can with our lives, our families, whatever. So, you don't need to do that. And what that does is that it takes up a ton of energy to judge, to criticize, to just not listen. Because I think in a way, if the way Jordan Peterson talked about it in his book, it's like most of us go into a conversation not listening to the other person because we're afraid. We're fearful of, oh, well, what am I going to say? Or how can I relate to that person? Or I hope they understand me if I say it this way. You come into with all these preconceived issues and notions, and it's like, holy crap, that's a lot. It's so full of energy. But if you just let all that go and you truly just listen, you'll never have to work for another conversation in your life. You will know what to say. And you'll know that if there isn't anything to say, there isn't anything to say. Or you'll know how to say it or what to say. And I think that can tend to, lean a little bit towards faith and other things that we've talked about. But so that was kind of a huge eye opener for me. And I've really tried to embrace that way of life. And it really does lighten yourself up a lot. When you lighten your load, you feel freer, and you can be more engaging in whatever situation you want to be engaging in, which is it's actually kind of cool. You can look at your family members in a whole new light because, it's not just your son. It's this fully formed, functioning adult. And you're like, oh, who's this dude? And so you kind of get rid of all the preconceived notions and just listen. And it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And it's fun to experience, for me, just experience people as they're growing and as they're changing and as they're going through their own journey, which is difficult for me sometimes because I was introduced to a different way of life so early. So I kind of look at the world like, okay, when are you guys going to start doing something different, and because I think those inflection points happen to us a lot in life, right? And I watch them happen to other people, and I'm sure people watch them happen to me, but there's just different points in our lives where it's like, okay, we have this event and it's difficult and it's tragic or it's enlightening or whatever, and so we can start going in a different direction because of that. And sometimes people don't go in a different direction because of that, and they have to come to another sort of potential precipice, which is difficult to watch and affects me when I see that okay, they're not quite ready to change something yet, and I have to stuff it all back down inside of me because I'm like, I want to convince them, but I also have learned in this lifetime that I can't convince anybody of anything that they're not ready to, like you said, once you read it the 11th time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the only one. I mean, you kind of got on your path at a very young age. Getting sober at 19 was I sober at 19? Nah. But anyway. So.
I'm guessing no. Yeah.
Truly, in my opinion, unique, right? And, now I'm in some of these online groups and people that are some of them are 25 years old, some of them are 65 years old. So it doesn't really, of course, it doesn't matter when, but it's amazing to me to see that people, whether it's our age or older or whatever, are like, oh, they have a light bulb moment and they're going to do something about it. And I think that's really cool. And I would only suggest to anybody younger than us listening to this, or I guess older too, but anybody younger, it's like the sooner, you start just kind of taking inventory in terms of who you are, figuring your stuff out, where you want to put yourself on this life path. You're directing the ship unless you're allowing all of your unconscious BS to direct the ship. And that is obviously a choice. But, spend some time with it. Life gets busy. And I think that's what happens, right? A lot of people get married, have kids, careers, blah, 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 blah. And so many of us wake up and we're in our 50s, 60s, retiring, whatever. And it's like, oh shit, now what? So anyway, figures, if anybody can figure that stuff out sooner, I think the better. It'll probably, if nothing else, it'll probably make for kind of a, I don't know, more interesting life, maybe.
Absolutely. I think questioning, and I've sort of lived by just questioning things and not taking everything that we've been handed as the truth or fact or whatever, because it's going to be different for everyone at different times, and life is going to be different at different times. We've been going for over an hour, interestingly enough. Speaking of not knowing what to say sometimes in conversations, I don't think we suffered from that malady during this particular podcast. But Is there anything that you would say? I know you kind of threw out a little bit of a lesson maybe, or something for somebody to pay attention to. Is there anything else that you'd want to share with anyone before we sign off?
I think pay attention to what you avoid, because that is probably the direction in which you need to go. So if it's feelings you're avoiding, conversation with somebody you're avoiding, I think that's a good one. I also think that if you do go on a path of inner work, self-discovery, or if you're thinking about it, just take the first step. I know a lot of people say that. I know it sounds cliche, but I think that it's scary. And if you can just start getting over the first step and the second step and the third step to opening yourself up, to making yourself vulnerable, is you're going to reap huge rewards. Can I plug a couple other books?
Sure, why not?
I'll plug the first one that comes to mind is Taming Your Gremlin by Rick Carson. That's been around for like 40 years. Highly recommend. I highly also recommend Kali's book, Emotional Intelligence.
Awareness is Evolution.
Thank you. Awareness is Evolution. Fabulous. Also, if you want to continue looking at your past and figuring out some of your other stuff as far as what makes you tick or how you can deal with it in the present, I highly recommend any of Dr. Gabor Mate's books. Any somatic healing type experiences or books, I think people can find really helpful as well.
Cool.
And of course, your books.
Thank you again. Not a shameless endorsement.
Not why we were here.
No, but no, for sure, not at all. And thank you for saying that. There are, you mentioned some wonderful books. And you know what? I'll put those books in the show notes too when I send this out, so people can check them out. I'll put links to the books and that sort of thing. So thank you so much, my dear wife. It really has been cool. We've talked so long about doing this, and maybe we have to make it a mini series or something, because I feel like there's a lot more to impart. But and I'm sure we'll do it when we head upstairs and sit on the deck for a while. So anyway, good. Thank you, and love you very much. And I know we weren't going to say that, but I did. So there we go.
Love you too, sweetheart.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, DarylDittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount by using the code PODCAST, DARYLDITTMER.com. Thanks again.